Record bar, the music store that closed last call. Picture this. It's 1982. You're cruising through a shopping mall and you hear the unmistakable opening riff of Eye of the Tiger spilling out of a record store. The neon sign reads, Record Bar, and inside, rows upon rows of vinyl albums, cassette tapes, and the newest innovation, compact discs, await your browsing pleasure. For over 4 decades, Record Bar served as the soundtrack supplier for millions of music lovers across the American heartland, growing from a single storefront in Durham, North Carolina, to a 180-store empire spanning the Southeast and beyond. Founded in 1960 by Roy Howe, this regional chain rode the waves of rock and roll, disco, punk, new wave, and grunge, becoming synonymous with music discovery for generations of customers. Yet despite surviving format wars, economic downturns, and changing musical tastes, Record Bar couldn't navigate the digital revolution that would ultimately silence its last song in 2002. This is the story of how a beloved music retailer that once dominated shopping malls across America found itself unable to adapt to a world where music was increasingly downloaded rather than purchased, where Tower Records and Virgin megastores offered vast selections, and where big box retailers like Best Buy began treating CDs as loss leaders to drive traffic to their electronics departments. The Record Bar story begins in the early 1960s when Roy Howe recognized that rock and roll wasn't just a fad. It was a cultural revolution that would create an entirely new retail opportunity. Opening his first store in Durham in 1960, Howe initially focused on serving college students and young adults who were hungry for the latest releases from artists like Elvis Presley, the Beatles, and Bob Dylan. The timing couldn't have been better. The decade saw explosive growth in record sales as stereo sound became standard, album artwork became an art form, and music became central to youth culture and identity. By 1965, Howe had expanded to 3 locations across North Carolina, establishing the template that would define Record Bar for decades. Mid-sized stores typically ranging from 1,500 to 3,000 square feet, located primarily in shopping malls, with an emphasis on current hits and deep catalog selections that appealed to serious music fans. The company's early success was built on knowledgeable staff who could recommend albums based on customer preferences, listening stations where shoppers could preview new releases, and a commitment to stocking both mainstream hits and more obscure titles that other retailers often ignored. Howe's business model was deceptively simple but remarkably effective. Locate stores in growing suburban markets, maintain competitive prices, and create an atmosphere where music discovery was encouraged and celebrated. The 1970s marked Record Bar's golden age of expansion as the company rode the wave of album-oriented rock and the LP boom that transformed the music industry. During this decade, Record Bar grew from a small regional chain to a significant player in music retail, expanding into Virginia, Tennessee, Georgia, and other southeastern states, while the total number of locations climbed toward 100 stores. The company went public in 1972, providing the capital necessary to fund aggressive expansion, just as the music industry was entering one of its most profitable periods in history. Albums by artists like Led Zeppelin, Pink Floyd, Fleetwood Mac, and the Eagles were generating massive sales volumes, and Record Bar positioned itself as the go-to destination for music fans seeking both chart toppers and deeper album cuts. The chain's buyers developed relationships with independent distributors and smaller record labels, ensuring that Record Bar stores often carried import albums, limited editions, and underground releases that couldn't be found at department stores or other mass retailers. This strategy of combining mainstream appeal with music connoisseur credibility helped establish Record Bar as more than just another retail chain. It became a cultural institution where teenagers discovered their musical identity and where adults could explore genres and artists beyond what they heard on the radio. Store managers were given significant autonomy to tailor their inventory to local tastes, meaning a Record Bar in Nashville might have an extensive country music section, while a location near a college campus would emphasize progressive rock and emerging punk acts. As the 1980s dawned, Record Bar faced its first major format transition with the introduction of compact discs, a technological shift that would initially boost profits but eventually contribute to the industry's transformation into a more price-competitive, commodity-driven business. The company embraced CDs early and aggressively, Recognizing that the higher profit margins on the new format, CDs typically retailed for $15 to $18 compared to $8 to $10 for vinyl albums, could drive significant revenue growth even as physical unit sales remained flat. Record Bar invested heavily in CD inventory and display fixtures, often devoting half or more of their floor space to the new format by the mid-1980s. The strategy paid off handsomely during the late 1980s and early 1990s as consumers replaced their vinyl collections with CD versions, and artists like Madonna, Michael Jackson, and Prince generated massive sales volumes. At its peak in the early 1990s, Record Bar operated approximately 180 stores across 15 states and generated annual revenues exceeding $200 million, making it one of the largest music retail chains in the southeastern United States. The company's success during this period was driven not just by CD sales, but also by diversification into related merchandise, including cassette tapes, music videos, concert t-shirts, posters, and music magazines. Record Bar stores became cultural hubs where music fans could not only purchase albums, but also discover new artists through in-store play, connect with like-minded enthusiasts, and stay current with music trends and news. However, the very forces that had driven Record Bar's growth began to shift dramatically in the mid-1990s as the music retail landscape became increasingly competitive and price-driven. The emergence of big-box retailers like Best Buy, Circuit City, and Walmart as major music sellers fundamentally changed the economics of CD sales, as these chains could afford to sell popular releases at or below cost to attract customers who would then purchase higher-margin electronics, appliances, or other merchandise. Best Buy's practice of selling hit CDs for $9.99 or even $7.99, prices that were often below Record Bar's wholesale cost, made it nearly impossible for specialty music retailers to compete on mainstream releases. Simultaneously, the rise of music superstores like Tower Records, Virgin Megastores, and HMV created a new category of destination music retailers that offered selections of 100,000 or more titles, extensive listening stations, live performances, and other experiential elements that smaller chains couldn't match. Record Bar found itself squeezed between discount retailers that could undercut their prices and megastores that could offer far broader selection and enhanced shopping experiences. The company attempted to respond by emphasizing customer service, exclusive releases, and specialized inventory. But these advantages became less significant as music fans increasingly shopped based on price and convenience rather than expertise and discovery. Mall traffic patterns were also shifting as suburban shopping centers faced competition from big-box strip centers and lifestyle retail developments that offered easier parking and larger store formats. The digital revolution that began in the late 1990s delivered the final blow to Record Bar's business model, though the company initially underestimated the speed and scope of the transformation that was about to reshape the entire music industry. The introduction of MP3 file compression, CD burning technology, and peer-to-peer file-sharing networks like Napster fundamentally altered how consumers discovered, acquired, and consumed music. While Record Bar executives initially viewed these developments as niche phenomena that would primarily affect tech-savvy college students, the reality was that digital music was rapidly becoming mainstream and attractive to consumers across all demographics. The ability to download individual songs rather than purchasing entire albums undermined the album-oriented business model that had sustained Record Bar for decades, while the convenience of instant gratification made the trip to the mall seem increasingly obsolete. CD sales, which had driven Record Bar's profitability throughout the 1980s and early 1990s, began declining precipitously after 2000 as consumers shifted toward digital alternatives. The company attempted various strategies to remain relevant, including expanding their DVD and video game selections, partnering with online retailers, and experimenting with digital music kiosks. But these efforts were too little and too late to offset the fundamental decline in physical music sales. Record Bar's mall-based locations, once valuable real estate that provided high visibility and foot traffic, became expensive liabilities as shopping patterns shifted and mall developers struggled to maintain occupancy rates. Financial pressures mounted quickly as Record Bar's revenues declined while fixed costs remained largely unchanged, creating an unsustainable situation that forced the company to begin closing underperforming locations and seeking buyers for the remaining operation. The chain's parent company, Musicland Group, which also owned Sam Goody and other music retail brands, was itself struggling with similar challenges across its entire portfolio of stores. Record Bar's regional focus, which had been a strength during the growth years by allowing the company to understand local markets and maintain efficient distribution, became a weakness in the digital age as consumers gained access to unlimited music selections through online services. The company's expertise in music curation and discovery, once highly valued by customers seeking new artists and genres, became less relevant as recommendation algorithms and online music communities provided alternative ways to find new music. Store employees who had built careers on deep musical knowledge found their skills increasingly obsolete as customers arrived already knowing what they wanted or simply browsed for impulse purchases. The social aspect of record shopping, which had been central to Record Bar's identity and customer loyalty, was being replaced by online communities and streaming services that offered new ways for music fans to connect and share their passion. By 2001, Record Bar was operating fewer than 100 locations and losing money on most of them, as the combination of declining sales, increased competition, and rising real estate costs made the majority of stores unprofitable. The end came swiftly for Record Bar as parent company Musicland Group filed for bankruptcy in early 2006, though Record Bar had effectively ceased operations several years earlier, as stores were either closed or converted to other Musicland formats. The company's final years were marked by clearance sales, store closings, and unsuccessful attempts to find buyers willing to invest in the physical music retail concept. Many longtime customers and employees expressed genuine sadness at Record Bar's demise, recognizing that something irreplaceable was being lost as these community gathering places disappeared from shopping malls across the Southeast. The chain's failure represented more than just another retail bankruptcy. It symbolized the end of an era when music discovery required physical exploration, when album purchases were significant financial and emotional investments, and when record stores served as cultural institutions that shaped musical tastes and communities. Former employees often describe Record Bar as more than just a job. It was a place where music lovers could make a living sharing their passion while introducing others to artists and genres they might never have discovered otherwise. The company's legacy lives on in the memories of millions of customers who found their favorite albums, discovered new artists, and connected with fellow music fans within Record Bar's walls, experiences that helped shape their musical identities and cultural awareness in ways that digital music consumption, despite its convenience and vast selection, has struggled to replicate. In retrospect, Record Bar's story illustrates both the opportunities and vulnerabilities inherent in building a business around a rapidly evolving technology and cultural phenomenon like recorded music. The company succeeded brilliantly for 4 decades by understanding that music retail was about much more than simply selling products. It was about facilitating discovery, building community, and serving as a cultural intermediary between artists and fans. Record Bar's knowledgeable staff, carefully curated inventory, and community-focused approach created genuine value for customers who viewed record shopping as both a practical necessity and a recreational activity. However, the same technological forces that had created the music retail industry ultimately transformed it beyond recognition, as digital distribution eliminated many of the traditional barriers to music access while simultaneously destroying the scarcity that had made record stores profitable. The rise of streaming services like Spotify and Apple Music has completed the transformation that began with Napster, creating a world where music access is essentially unlimited and instant, but where the serendipitous discovery and social interaction that defined the record store experience are increasingly rare. While some independent record stores have survived by focusing on vinyl collectors, audiophiles, and nostalgia-driven consumers, the mass-market music retail model that Record Bar represented has essentially disappeared, replaced by digital platforms that offer unprecedented convenience and selection, but lack the human element that made record stores special. Today, more than 2 decades after Record Bar's final stores closed their doors, the company's story serves as a compelling case study in how technological disruption can overwhelm even well-managed businesses that have successfully adapted to previous changes in their industry. Record Bar had navigated the transition from 45 RPM singles to LP albums, from mono to stereo, from vinyl to cassettes to CDs, and from independent record labels to major corporate consolidation, demonstrating remarkable resilience and adaptability throughout most of its history. The company's failure wasn't due to poor management, inadequate customer service, or lack of market understanding. It was the result of a fundamental shift in how music is distributed and consumed that eliminated the need for the type of physical retail experience that Record Bar provided. The speed of this transformation caught many industry observers by surprise, as the music business went from record profits in the late 1990s to widespread bankruptcy and consolidation within just a few years. Record Bar's demise, along with the collapse of other major music retailers like Tower Records, represented the end of an entire retail category that had seemed permanent and profitable just a few years earlier. For the millions of music fans who grew up browsing Record Bar's aisles, the chain's disappearance marked not just the loss of a convenient shopping option, but the end of a cultural institution that had played a significant role in shaping their musical education and social development. A reminder that even the most beloved businesses can become obsolete when the fundamental assumptions underlying their business model are swept away by technological and cultural change.